Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, we're going to discuss some news that I read about lawyer bonuses. And most of this comes from a Bloomberg article where bonuses are going to be, over $100,000 for some senior associates. Basically, people that have been in big law firms for a number of years. And it could be up to like $164,000 for a lawyer in 2021. And Bloomberg had this chart of bonuses over the years. And the bonuses have gone up a ton this year to attract the top talent. But it's also because of inflation. I know some people don't want to admit there's inflation, but there's definitely inflation everywhere. Everybody from minimum wage workers to obviously lawyers are having to get paid bonuses to encourage them to stay, especially now with all this work from home stuff. And that's another thing this article talked about is how the law firms are having to do the same thing the big four accounting firms are going to have to do, which is pay people more, give them retention bonuses, allow them to work from home. But I thought this information was really good because I think some people, when they're choosing whether to be an accountant, they look to finance is obviously one way because they go to business school. And then a lot of people consider law firms, and a lot of people in the big four accounting firms that are in tax, a lot of them have their law degrees and then go on to get another, certification in law in addition to that. But I mean, if you can, it would be better in my opinion, in today's show, at least, to be a lawyer, because I think that's one thing to consider about being in the big four accounting firms and why a lot of people aren't doing it anymore is that because it's a lot of work, you work tons of hours and the pay isn't that good. And even the bonuses that we talked about, because there's retention bonuses this year because of COVID and the after effects of COVID and people having their salaries cut, and then the big four accounting firms having to come back and raise their salaries and give them bonuses in order for them to stay, because all these people didn't like what happened during COVID, and a lot of them left and are leaving for higher paying jobs now. So the big four accounting firms are having to pay more. And that's obviously what the law firms are going to do. But what I'm trying to say is that if you work in the big four accounting firms, you're going to have to work a lot of hours anyway. So in my opinion, if you're able to get a good law degree and a good law job, then that would be the way to go, because you're going to be ending up giving up a ton of your life anyway to the big four accounting firms. The only difference is you have to go to school for more years to be a lawyer, but in accounting, you have to get your CPA, which a lot of places say is harder than the bar exam. So, you're not going to make as much as a lawyer. At least at a big law firm in the big four accounting firms. And that's the other thing to consider too. If you can't get a good law job, then you could always go to the big four accounting firms. So that's the way I see it. If you're thinking of the big four accounting firms right now, but you don't know whether to be to go that path or go into law, I would say go into law and then use the big four accounting firms as a fallback, because there's many different kinds of areas in the big four accounting firms where you can work as a lawyer. You can work in tax, you can work in consulting. There's just a lot of places you can work, and it can be your fallback. But the amount of money you're going to make in a law firm, especially in a big law firm, is going to be way more. And especially this article talks about specialties in M&A and things like that as far as a lawyer goes, where you're going to be able to make way more money than an accountant. And if you're able to get one of these jobs, you're going to be making double of a big four accountant just a couple years into your law specialty than you would for like a Big Four accountant that's been there for almost a decade. Because really where it makes the difference as a Big Four accountant is when you become partner. But obviously, if you're a partner at one of these big law firms, then you're going to make a ton more money. And the only way you can match on the Big Four accounting firms is by making partner and then by being the head of a region. But I think that's where you could sort of catch up in the Big Four accounting firms because they are extremely big. That if you were able to work your way up to leadership, then you can match these lawyers and then even do better than them, especially if you leverage it into an industry role like CFO or just some kind of executive position in a public company where you can get equity and things like that and special bonuses there. But that's basically the only way you're going to catch up as a Big Four accountant. But in the short term, you're going to make a lot more money as an attorney. So that's just something to consider for people that are thinking about becoming a Big Four accountant, or maybe you are a Big Four accountant and thinking about possibly being a lawyer. Maybe you're a lawyer in the Big Four accounting firms. But that's just something interesting to think about. And as we have seen the retention bonuses of the Big Four accounting firms, we see that they're like a few $1,000s. And they're definitely not 20,000, 10,000, hundreds of thousands like these lawyers are getting. So that's just something to consider. And the main bonus they're talking about in this article is like the regular yearly bonus for an accountant. For a lawyer. And they're talking about hundreds of thousands. You're never going to get that as a Big Four accountant unless you're a partner. I can guarantee you that right now. So that's just my analysis and opinion of this Bloomberg article that I saw about lawyers and their bonuses. So that's the podcast for today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, stay up to date about Big Four news, and support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes to this podcast if you can. Thanks for listening.